and you should be able to see that I'm recording. And that's for the people who are unable to be here with us for the live kind of session. And so the way I do this, well, let me just advance here to uh, sort of a general information screen here that your comments are not anonymous since you've probably signed in with your name and things like that. So you probably should use good judgment. This probably isn't the time to tell me that your significant other had just had a fight with you and you're breaking up, because I'm recording this and I'm going to post it on, what is that, YouTube. So whether or not well, yeah, just kind of use good judgment here. Yeah, the session is being recorded for others to access later. And if you do have a question, I'm always looking at the chat area to kind of see if anybody has posted a comment or a question or something like that. And as I say that, I just realized, there we go. My chat area was sort of disappeared from me. But I keep an eye on that just to make sure that I'm keeping track of what kinds of questions you do have. Also, just for those viewing this as a recording, if you want to record your answers on a piece of paper or something, you can do that, because the poll that the people who are here live, the poll will not work for you. You're not going to see that on your screen. There's only certain things I can display on screen, and apparently the poll is not available to you. But I'll read the results of how everybody who's present here, all 17, 18 of us, I'll read who voted for what, not who individually voted for an answer, but how it sort of went. So what I'm going to try to do, let me see if I can launch a poll so that you can see what it's going to look like. And those of you who are here for the live version here should have had something pop up on your screen saying use the buttons below to record your answer to the question. All of these are going to be multiple choice. I didn't recall if I had 4 or 5 choices. So we're going to have a chance to vote on something, using those clicker buttons here. So I see a couple of people have already kind of put in a vote kind of thing, but I'm going to end the poll and relaunch it so that it's blank. So don't put in anything yet, okay? So what I'm going to do is reveal the first question to be from chapter 1. And then you're going to use that poll in order to answer your question. Yeah, answer the first question. So here we go. And the question being, let me blank it out here. The goal of psychology that's most concerned with using psychological knowledge to help bring about desirable behavioral outcomes is what? Is the answer description, explanation, prediction, or influence? So I think you can go ahead and register a vote right now for which answer. Woo, wait a second. Let me just see something here. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, I see people are able to answer the question now, and it looks like 3 out of 18 of you have put in a vote, and that's okay. It'll take a few minutes for us. Again, those of you who are seeing this as a Greg can't see the answers. Actually, Greg, there won't be answers on your screen. You have to take the answers off of the. You have to look at the possibilities here on the screen, and then just go 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending However, a couple of people have answered number 5, which is not a possibility. So let me see if I can just say, okay, so as you read the question and look at these 4 things right here, um, pick one of these. And then when you look at the poll, you're just going to enter 1, 2, 3, or 4 as your response. Okay? So I see Dasha saying she kind of found it there, but I'm still kind of confused why a couple of people have answered number 5, because there is no number 5 right now. So here, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, these are your possible answers. And if you think it's number 1, click on number 1 in the poll. If you think it's number 2, click on number 2, 3, and 4. So it looks like 10 out of 18 have put in a response so far. So I'm going to end the poll and let you see how people answered. And if you look at your screen, and I'm again reading it for the people who are seeing this as a recording because you can't see the poll, but most of the people who answered number 3. It looks like 46% answered number 3, and I'm about to give you the correct answer, which is number 4, influence. If you remember in our first lecture, I think it was, I said that we try to describe behavior. Piaget was a master at that. We try to explain why people do things. We predict maybe a little bit of what they're going to do, whether they're going to be violent or not. But if we're trying to help bring about favorable behavioral outcomes, in that case, we're really trying to influence behavior. So the correct answer for number 1 would be number 4. Oh, and it looks like I was reading things wrong. Yeah, 46% went for number 4. Not sure why things aren't lining up for me there. So, okay, let's see if we can do better with the second question here. I'm going to relaunch the poll so that'll clear your screen. And if you're like me, you kind of have to get the poll off your screen, just drag it to the side or something like that. And I'm going to give you a second question. Okay. And there it is. You read in the newspaper that the oldest living person in the world was born in 1879. This strikes you as a coincidence because that's the year in which historians tell us that, what? Number 1, modern experimental psychology was born. Wilhelm Wundt was born. Psychologists defined the soul, or the behaviorist movement began. So hopefully we're getting the swing of it now, realizing that you just enter into the poll which of these 4 alternatives. Number 1, 2, 3, or 4. And all you do is, wherever you've put the poll on your screen, that's the button you want to push. So, need to drag something around here on my screen. Okay, here we go. And looks like we have 13 out of 18 have put in a response. And I'm going to end the poll and let you see the results. I'll share the results with you. And you can see that 62% of you voted for number 1. And that is, in fact, the correct answer. Modern experimental psychology was born in 1879. Wilhelm Wundt was actually born, I don't know, 1829 or something like that. It doesn't matter. But remember that as a science, he set up that first psychology lab in 1879. And so the correct answer there for this question was number one. So hopefully you're doing well. Okay. And again, like I said, use the chat area if you'd like me to explain further something. I don't allow microphone privileges for you guys because my head would explode if everybody started talking at the same time, and you don't want that to happen. So, um, like I said, I am keeping an eye on that chat area just to make sure that I'm not missing anybody's comments. So, okay, let's relaunch the poll, and you'll get a new chat box in order to be able to, or not chat box, but poll box, to be able to register your answer to the next question here. Let me see if this is from chapter, yeah, this is chapter 2, actually. An activist stops people at a shopping mall and asks them questions about their attitudes toward gun control. Which research technique is being used? Is that a survey, experiment, case study, naturalistic observation? So again, when it comes time to take your exam, I don't ask you what it is a case study or a naturalistic observation. I'm going to ask you to apply your knowledge. I mean, you still have to know what these things are, but as you can see from the question, I'm asking you to put your knowledge to use here and identify what the heck's going on in this question. So looks like we have 13 out of 17, 14 out of 17. That's good, good result there. And looks like people are pretty up to date on what research technique is being used here. But let me end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you so that you can see most people did go for number one, a survey, and that is in fact the correct answer. In fact, geez, there's a huge, or as our president would say, a huge survey that's going to be done this year. Anybody know what I'm referring to? You can use the chat box. See who's got the quickest fingers here. Yeah. Oh, oh, I guess in a sense, yeah, I guess it is the election sort of a survey kind of thing too. But I was actually thinking of the census, which is going to be conducted pretty soon. And we just got an email today, by the way, saying it's in the best interest of hack if everybody who gets surveyed for the census answers correctly or whatever. Because I think the census is used to allocate funding for education, and we wouldn't want to miss out on possible funding, not necessarily specifically for hack, but your school districts and things like that depend on census figures. So since surveys are actually important kinds of things. So, okay, let me launch a new poll, and I don't know how it appears to you on your home screens, but it always pops up in the middle of my screen. I have to drag it out of the way so I can look at the next question. Those of you seeing this as a recording don't have that problem because the poll doesn't pop up on your screen. So let me give you another question here. Yeah, I thought so, Aaron. Yep. Okay. This is an important kind of question. Which of the following correlation coefficients expresses the strongest relationship between two variables. So negative 0.79, 0.32, 0.10, negative 0.90. Which one of those correlation coefficients shows the strongest relationship between two variables? I taught you a little bit about these things so that when you read those articles for your reports, you might understand some of the some of the results that they report. Actually, I did have somebody, I scored somebody's paper last night, and they showed a good understanding of what a correlation coefficient was, and I was pretty impressed. So they're either pretty smart, I'm a halfway decent teacher, or uh, who knows, they learned it from the book. So, okay, looks like we have, how many? 13 out of 18 have put in a response. And it's kind of split between a couple of things here. Let me end the poll and show you the results. And you should be able to see that 79% of the people here said that number 4 is the correct answer. 21% went for number 3. And the correct answer is number 4. Um, again, using the what is that? The chat area. What's the weakest correlation that we would ever find? Yeah. So if something is close to 0, Andrew, good quick fingers there, and Greg and Kennedy too. Um, this actually, this 0.10 is the weakest of all 4 of the correlation coefficients here. The one in second place would be negative 0.79. Remember, for strength, we just look how close is it to 1 or -1. I'm going to try to draw something on the screen. Remember my little graph here, 1.0 and what was it, negative 1.0, and anything down here is weak. I shouldn't even try at this hour of the evening to try to write something here, but this is 0 down here. So hopefully that's on your screen so that you can see um, that, what is it, negative 0.90, that would be up in here, and negative 0.79 up in here, 0.32 over here, and boy, what was that last one? 0.10, way down there. So I hope that helps explain those correlation coefficients for those of you who might have answered that number 3 showed the strongest relationship between two variables. Excuse me. Sorry. Remember that anything above 1.0 or negative 0.10 means somebody's calculator is broken too, because these are the highest correlation coefficients we would ever find. And in all practical purposes, they don't exist. We never really find a perfect one-to-one relationship between two things. Okay, should have popped a new poll onto your screen that Aaron is now pulling off to the side, as well as me. And let me, because I'm running 2 screens here, it takes me a while. Okay, this one everybody should get correct. The only research method that can be used to draw a cause and effect relationship between two variables is what? The only research method that can show cause and effect between two variables. What do we Which one of those experimental methods am I talking about? There's only one of them, and it looks like many people have answered 13 out of 18, so that's a pretty good percentage of us, 72%. And so I'm going to end the poll. Again, I'll read it for those of you seeing this as a recording and share the results with you. And as you can see on your screen, 77% voted for number 3, which is in fact the correct answer. Couple of you got a little sort of distracted by these two right here, correlation and case study. And in fact, let's see, I think it was one of my Abigails who really knew the saying very well. Correlation does not mean, anybody remember what the end of the sentence is? Correlation does not mean Kennedy's got the quick, yeah, causality or causation. Yeah. And so we can't say that, if we're talking about a cause and effect relationship, we cannot say correlation, because correlation just means two things are related. And I think I gave you my crazy example of the murder rate and ice cream purchases. They both go up and down at the same time, but doesn't mean murder causes ice cream eating or vice versa. So an experiment is the strong way that we can say that A causes B. So, okay, let me see what I'm doing here. Okay, oops. Let me get the right button here, and you should again have that aggravating poll in the middle of your screen that you have to drag to the side. It's probably a better way of doing that. I don't know if you can hit the minimize button and then whatever it, enlarge it again, maximize it. But anyway, okay, let's get a new question here. And which provides a baseline measure of behavior for comparing whether or not the independent variable had an effect on the dependent variable. So which of these four things gives us a baseline measure? I'm not so sure if I gave a good explanation of what baseline is, but everybody who's answered so far has it correct. So, oops, I just, what is that? Broadcaster's curse. As soon as you say everybody's got it correct, somebody answers incorrectly. But at least we have 9 out of 10 answered correctly so far. What provides a baseline measure of behavior for comparing whether or not the independent variable had an effect on dependent variable? So I'll let it go for a few more seconds here. This actually has a timer on it, minute 20 since the poll opened. So I'm going to end the poll, and looks like 13 out of 17 had answered already anyways. And if I share the results, as you can see in the middle of your screen, most people answered a control group. What percentage? 92%. And only one person went for experimental group. And in fact, the control group is the correct answer. Control group gets no treatment. And an experimental group, sometimes we call them a treatment group or an experimental group. They get treatments. If you remember my baby chicks that we injected the testosterone into, they were experimental or treatment groups, and we had a control group that got nothing, and we could actually see whether or not testosterone injections created growth or other things. So good job for those of you who had the correct answer here, that the control group is, they provide a baseline. Baseline means uh, actually a measure of something without any treatment. That's a baseline, or even where we started out from. Yeah, sort of a benchmark, I would say. Yeah, but uh, yeah, it's people who don't get any kind of treatment. Okay, let me relaunch the poll. Hopefully, uh, this will work. And again, there you go, Aaron. Time to drag it to the side. And I'm doing the same thing on both my screens here. So, next question. And oh, this was just for fun. This is really not on the test or anything like that. But we just got done with Valentine's Day, didn't we, last Friday? So people usually fall in love with someone very different from themselves. In other words, opposites attract. So A would be number one, B would be number two. So just for fun, let's kind of see. Uh, this is just opinion on your part because you didn't study anything about this, but looks like we've got 12, 15. Boy, this was an easy one. Only 13 people were answering before. So I'm going to end the poll, let you see the results just for fun. Here we go. And I'm going to share the results. And most people answered true. And actually, this is based on a study. And the study found that the correct answer was false. That most people, let me see if I have most people fall in love with somebody who's kind of similar to themselves. And I'm a psychologist. My wife is a social worker. And if you think about it this way, um, how could I say it? Let's say somebody is into country western music and somebody is into, I don't know, emo or goth, or I don't know, is that still a thing? How are they going to meet? How are they going to cross paths? And actually, one study done a while ago said most people marry somebody who lives within 4 blocks of them. And I think that's a testimony. We usually find somebody who's very similar to ourselves. And I think it kind of makes sense when you think about it a little bit. But there are some people who are attracted to the opposite. Bernie rally? Uh, oh, okay. So two people who go to a Bernie rally might have very similar kinds of interests. Although, is anybody following the news last night? A couple of people running around topless, and it wasn't me at a Bernie rally. So anyway, uh, where am I going with all that? Okay, relaunch the poll. Okay, and again, I think I have another one. Oh yeah, there's another fun one. Got to drag the poll off your screen there again. Sorry, Aaron. It's an optical illusion when the moon appears larger on the horizon than it does when it's overhead. Just kind of talking a little bit about perceptions, illusions, sensations, etc. Um, so again, just for fun, it's not on the exam or anything. Although I think there was an item in our textbook re regarding this. So I'll let it go for just a couple more seconds here. Hannibal Lecter. It's funny because I did not see, nor will I see, what was the movie? Silence of the Lambs. I think if you work in the field of psychology and pathology, it's it's not entertaining to watch movies about it. I have to admit, you just want to get away from it. So, okay. where am I here? Let me end the poll, and I'll share it with you so that you can see most people, well, 71% said true. It is an optical illusion. And that, in fact, is the correct answer. It's an optical illusion because when the moon is on the horizon, it's sort of contrasted against trees and buildings and stuff like that. But when it's straight overhead, there's nothing to compare it to, and it looks smaller, but it's really not. And I mean, it looks like a huge. I remember one time I thought it was a Gulf gas station sign because it just looked huge and orange and stuff. But when it gets way overhead, it looks a little bit smaller because there's nothing to compare it to. But I'll bet if you got under a tree or something and looked at it that way, it might appear a little bit bigger. So, okay, let's I think move forward to some questions from chapter 3, hopefully. So let's drag the poll out of the way. And again, kind of looking at the chat area, not seeing anything. So let me give you another question here from chapter 3 now. This one hopefully makes sense to you. The part of the the part of the neuron responsible for carrying the neural message from the cell body to the terminal buttons is the what? What part of the neuron is responsible for carrying the message from the cell body to the terminal buttons? It looks like 12 out of 17 have put in an answer already. Those of you, again, looking at this on a recording, the only thing you can do is kind of put in your mind what you think the correct answer is. Those of us who are here live are using a poll where we're able to click on a button in order to register our thoughts. So 15 out of 17 have registered a answer. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And as you can see, most people answered the axon, which is in fact the correct answer. And I used to think of it this way, see if I can, maybe I don't think I put it on the board. It acts, I'm not real quick with the mouse here. The axon acts on sort of the terminal buttons. And it's also, if you remember, it's a one-way street where we have these dendrite things, and then that cell body, and then the axon, and then those terminal buttons at the tail end there that kind of they spit out those things, and I think we have a question about those things. And again, I'm not sure that my writing on a screen appears for those of you looking at the recording. I apologize for that, but again, there's limitations to this software. So, okay, let me give you a new poll, and we'll look at another question. Dragging the poll off the screen there so you can read the question for yourself. And let's see how we're doing here. Oops, okay. So, okay. This one should be pretty easy. I expect 100% on this one. The gap between neurons. Oh my, yeah, right. After I just revealed the answer to you, I don't know if anybody saw it, but yeah, the gap between neurons. You should know this one. Looks like we're 8 out of 8 so far. Yeah, right. What is that? Broadcaster's curse. As soon as I say everybody's going to get it correct. But we're 11 for 11 so far. So I'm going to end the poll because I think we know the answer to this one. and share the results that, yes, everybody did, in fact, vote for the synapse, which is definitely the correct answer. The gap between neurons. Remember, they don't connect to each other. There are spaces, it's microscopic, but that's where, well, yeah, the space is called the synapse. I think we saw that video that kind of, I tried to show you what it might look like by their representation. So, okay, let's get a new poll, drag it off your screen. Again, I think I have another question from chapter 3. Messages are carried across the synapses by what? Little green men riding bicycles, texting, electrical charges, or neurotransmitters. Now remember, the question is asking across the synapses. So, what is it that carries messages across the synapses? Because that's different than something else. So looks like we have 9 people have answered. We're up to, looks like 12 so far. And 12 out of 16. It's 13. So we're doing pretty well here. So I think I'm going to, it's been, the poll's been open for about a minute and 10 seconds. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you so that you can see most people voted for neurotransmitters. And that is, in fact, the correct answer. Now, where are the electrical charges? A couple people said electrical charges, but where are they? Yeah, Madison, quick fingers. Yeah, they're in the axon. Remember that that sort of long thing that had like what do we call that? The myelin sheath, and electrical messages go down this thing in the middle here, the axon. But when it gets to the end, it triggers the terminal button to spit out those neurotransmitters, and that's what gets carried across the synapse. So want to be aware of that, I think, at some future point. Okay, let's see. We're gonna clear your screen, drag that across. And those of you watching this as a recording probably wondering what I'm talking about, but if you join us live the next time, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, next question here. This section of the nervous system is responsible for calming the body after a stressful response. So which section of the nervous system is responsible for calming your body after a stress response, let's say? And it looks like we have about 8 responses in so far out of 16. And yeah, there's one definitely favored by the electoral college, you guys. Okay, guess this is sort of a survey. Which one do you think is right? And we kind of record our answers. So I'm using the survey method here to do your review. And looks like 14 out of 16 have voted. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. And as you can see, what is that? 64% voted for number 3, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is in fact the correct answer. Does anybody remember my memory aid for parasympathetic? The P, and what I have you put your notes? Yeah, Kennedy's quick on stuck on the fingers there. Peace, yeah. Parasympathetic nervous system brings peace and calm after a stressed response, that fight or flight reaction. And I think I said we can train that a little bit through relaxation and meditation exercises. Um, and it probably would benefit us to be able to have some influence over that. Okay, let's, what on earth did I just do? Sorry, your poll just disappeared from my screen, and I'm looking for where I put it. Oops. Okay, here it is. Okay, there we go. Let me relaunch the poll and give you a fresh screen there. Here we go. Okay, there. Like I said, I get a little rusty if I haven't used this software for a while. And I only use it about 4 times a semester. I will, by the way, do this for all 4 of our exams. And just a reminder before I go any further, just to remind you that you can use the 3x5 card during the exam. 3x5 inches, I got to be specific, and handwritten notes with no magnifying devices permitted. Okay, let's take a look at another question. Okay. Oh, um, again, just sort of a fun one here. Um, with which statement do you agree? Children younger than 10 years old should be given medications to correct emotional and or behavioral problems. Or 2, most childhood behavior and emotional problems like ADHD are not really disorders, but are a function of just being a kid. What do you think? Again, there's no right or wrong answer, especially about this one. It's just to break up a little bit of the monotony of sorts, or just break up our attention a little bit here. So we're not going to let it go too long. Looks like we're up over a minute and a half here, so that's pretty good. And I'm not sure how somebody voted for number 3, but let me share the results with you. And as you can see, most people voted for number 2. Most childhood and emotional problems like ADHD are not really disorders, but are a function of just being a kid. And I'll bet many of you would agree with me on this. I'll probably talk about it some other time too, but what do I want to say? Anybody else besides me believe that medications are overprescribed for children? Yeah, especially children under 10. I, uh, I'm hesitant to see them prescribed to children, which, would be kind of going along with number 1 here. But I have seen a need for them on occasion. I wouldn't say left and right, hey, put them on Ritalin or Strattera or something. I think sometimes it's the teacher pulling their hair out and they just say, kid's not coming back into the classroom unless we put them on Ritalin. So I'm not a real fan of that, though. Okay, let me give you a new poll. Hopefully that does bring up a new poll for you to drag off your screen. And let's see if I can come up with a new question for you here from chapter 4, which is that sensation and perception stuff we've been taking. Oh, I lied. I'm going to skip that one. Let's kind of go to just number 4 here. The parts of the eye that can only detect black and white and shades of gray are what? The cones, the rods, iris, vitreous humor. And I think some of you in the what is it, Tuesday Thursday. If you're in the Tuesday Thursday class, you missed my uh, introduction of the BS machine or BS detector. Some of you might be able to use your BS detector to realize that a couple of these possibilities are total BS. Like number 3 is not a possibility, and number 4 is also probably not a possibility as a correct answer here. So basically then you're left with a choice of 2 possibilities. And I encourage you, when you're taking an exam of any sort, you know, eliminate a couple or at least one, and it makes your chances of getting the correct answer much greater. So I'm going to end the poll here and let you see how people voted. As you can see, most people went for the second one, rods. And as you can see, that is in fact the correct answer. The rods and the cones. What do cones detect? Again, you can use the chat area there. Yeah, color. Good quick fingers there, Greg. Cones in color, remember the C's. They're at the center of the retina. Red, green, yellow, red. What is it? Red, blue, green. Is that it? RGB. Yeah, red, green, blue. Are sort of the primary colors. And then remember, I guess we did the American, no, yeah, it was the American flag in yellow, green, and black. And the after image we saw in red, white, and blue. And that trichromatic theory did a lousy job of explaining that. Okay, let me relaunch the poll. Again, it appears in the middle of your screen for those of you here live, and you need to drag it away. And let me see if I can give you another question. Here we go. The blank is located at the rear of the eye and transforms light into patterns that we can see. This one should be pretty easy, because I think I just gave you the answer a little bit ago. So it looks like how many? 7, 8 out of 16 have put in an answer. We're up to 10 now out of 16. What transforms light into patterns that we can see? And I think we're close to a minute here. So we have about 11 out of 17 have put in a response so far. So I'm going to end the poll. Again, those of you seeing this as a recording can't see the results, but I'll read them to you. Oops. And as you see the poll come up, the results, most people answered that number 3, the retina transforms light into patterns that we can see. And that is, in fact, the correct answer. A couple people mentioned optic nerve. This, you remember, it's that that spot on the retina. That's a terrible circle, but there's a spot on the retina where there are no rods. Remember, the rods are sort of on the outside of the retina. Boy, that is a terrible, terrible circle. The cones being more at the center. And anybody remember what's important about this optic nerve spot right here? I gave it to you in your notes, but what's so important about that? Anybody remember page 97 of your textbook? There's a little bit, yeah. This is actually a blind spot. Yeah, because there are no rods, the cones, they're on the outside, but your brain kind of fills in, uses information from this cone. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it fills in for that spot there where there are no rods and cones. And that's because the optic nerve takes messages to your bristle brain. Okay, supposed to be a brain there. And then actually the back part of your brain, the occipital lobe, is what really transforms it into whatever it becomes. Okay, let me clear your poll there. And let's see if I have more questions. Oh, I guess I don't. So I'm kind of looking at the chat area here to see what other kinds of questions you guys might have. How many questions will be on the test? Great question. There will, I say there's 50 questions, but actually there will be 51. So you could actually get 102 points. On a scale of 100, you could get 102%, each question being worth 2 points. So on your Scantron, you answer the first 50 questions on the front of your Scantron, then we'll flip it over. I'll explain that when you're at the exam. Will the test have any questions specifically from the textbook that we did not cover in class? That is a great question, and the answer to Madison's question is yes. There will be questions on the exam that were not covered specifically in class. And the reason that happens is, first of all, I don't have enough time to cover all the things that I want you to know from the textbook. Second of all, you bought the textbook, why not read it? And thirdly, sometimes in my 9:30 class, I forget to cover something, and so you kind of have to have read it out of the book, and that's why I have to say that the answer to this. The question from Madison, will the test have any questions from the textbook that we didn't cover in class? The answer is definitely. About 30% of the questions probably were not covered in class. Is it all multiple choice? Yes. 4 answers, and in fact, none of them are none of the above, all the above, and those crappy kinds of things as well. Any tips for what to study from the book? I would say um, in, where is it, chapter 3 and 4, there's a lot of anatomy, but don't get crazy over it. I think if I wanted you to know something about the anatomy of the eyeball or something, I gave you a lot of notes about that. So there are other areas of the eyeball that I'm not real interested in. I think today in class, for those of you who have Monday, Wednesday, today I talked a little bit about the ear, and there's some stuff in the eardrum, or not the eardrum, but there's some stuff in the ear that, boy, oh boy, it's not a neuroanatomy or a A&P, anatomy and physiology class. So the stirrup, the anvil, I don't need you to know that. It's in a picture, but I probably have given you most of the anatomy kinds of things that I want you to know. Uh, you know, stuff out in the margin, those study tips, a lot of times I will form a question based on those. So you do want to pay attention to those. I think from chapter 1 in our notes and in class, we talked about, what is it, subfields of psychology. And there's a whole page of stuff about that. And I don't really care that you memorize all of that, just that, some general things about um, what's mentioned in chapter 1, stuff from your notes. I have seen people attending class who don't take notes, and I think that's a big mistake. unless you use the PowerPoints, which I publish on Brightspace D2L. So that's a long answer to any tips for what to study from the book. Remember, by the way, that on Brightspace, there's a link to the publisher's website where there are, flashcards that help you with vocabulary. If you know that vocabulary pretty well, if you know um, there are fill in the blanks on that publisher's website and multiple choice, if you know them pretty well, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Rayon asks, are there chapters that you should look into more than others? Actually, 2 and 3. However, chapters 1 and 4, there are probably 8 questions from chapter 1, 8 questions from number 4. Chapter 2, I would bet 16 questions there and 16 from chapter 3. So chapter 2 and 3 are bigly, and chapters 1 and 4 not so huge. How much will be focused on dates and important figures throughout the history of psychology? Um, it's not a history course, so if I mention a date, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just trying to give you, you know, Skinner, who was around in 1940 or something like that, said that blah, 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 blah. So I will not ask you to have memorized dates. Some of the important figures, I gave you some important figures. There are more mentioned in the textbook, but I don't necessarily think that they were important enough to put on the test. But boy, I keep mentioning that Wilhelm Wundt guy, so I think I know something about him. Um, but other people who, not so important. Uh, Other questions from you guys? I mean, you got me here. So let's use this. By the way, those of you seeing this as a recording probably cannot see the questions that are being asked. So I am answering, or I'm reading those questions from the chat area of our Zoom session here. And question is, will the test take up the entire class? Probably not. I've had people be done, the speed readers, the super achievers, 15 minutes, and they're done. When you're done, you can leave. I would ask you to leave quietly, of course. And here's something that if you're not done and you see somebody jump up, run out, don't pay attention to them, because that can increase your test anxiety if you're a person who's inclined to have that. So you get the whole period, an hour and 15 minutes. Most people, there's a question here, is the test timed? No. In fact, if somebody needed an hour and 20 minutes, I actually have held the next class out for a few minutes while somebody finishes up their test. Maybe you've had that happen before, but I don't want people to feel rushed. I don't think you'll feel rushed. Um, so I think you'll have more than enough time. Rayon's asking, should we remember the people, psychologists, and their beliefs that we studied in class? Uh, there might be a question regarding that. Of course, I'm not going to tell you who. So maybe you want to, maybe not memorize word for word, but again, general knowledge about these people. Um, I would not write on your card 8 different psychologists. That's ridiculous. You're using too much space on something that's not totally important. Remember, chapter 2 and chapter 3, there's a lot of information on the exam, so I might jot a couple things from chapter 1, but most of my notes would be on my card from chapters 2 and 3. Especially, I'll give you a hint, you're probably going to want to know the difference between an independent and a dependent variable, because I'm going to ask you to identify them in a study. So you better know how to identify what's the independent, what's the dependent variable. So I'm still looking at questions here. You are welcome, Greg. Again, been a long day for me, but this is something I enjoy doing for you guys. So as I said before, I am going to continue doing this for our next 3 exams. Um, I will be posting the video of this on YouTube, and if you joined late or want to review anything of it, you all will get the link. Even though you've been here for the live session, you will all get the link to the recording of what I just did here. So hopefully that'll be beneficial to you. So I'm still looking at the chat area. Any last questions from anybody or comments or anything that I can address? And it looks like, yeah, you're welcome, Madison. Again, if there's feedback you want to email me, uh, how I can improve this or anything like that, I am well open to that kind of feedback. I don't get insulted by feedback or criticisms or anything. So I want this to be a good course for you guys. I want you guys to learn, and hopefully you'll all get A's, but I think I shared with you, I got a C when I took this course, and here I am teaching it of all things. So anyway, have a great night. I am going to sign off, and I will see you at the exam.